I'm Eliza, a 28-year-old native of London, a city renowned for its vibrant energy and perpetual motion. This bustling metropolis has always been my home, and growing up here as part of an upper-middle-class family greatly influenced my formative years. While we didn't possess great wealth, our life was comfortable, offering ample chances for growth and exploration. Our home, situated in a serene corner of London, epitomized the equilibrium between professional pursuits and personal relaxation. Be sure to subscribe to my channel to enjoy more captivating true stories like this one. Stay tuned until the end of this video, as the narrative promises to be exceptionally engaging. Despite my parents' busy schedules with business and social commitments, they always ensured they spent quality time with me, so I never felt overlooked. From an early age, I was blessed with everything a child could desire: education, love, and a caring family. My childhood was filled with cherished memories, strolling through Hyde Park on sunny weekends, enjoying the vibrant festivals on Oxford Street, and spending cozy evenings at home surrounded by books and the gentle strains of classical music. These were the moments that defined my early life. These are memories I hold dear. My affinity for animals was sparked during my childhood. I vividly recall pleading with my parents to adopt a stray kitten I discovered in the park. I would spend countless hours in the garden, captivated by sparrows flitting from branch to branch. Animals became a significant part of my life, not merely objects of fascination but companions who taught me compassion, empathy, and responsibility. Growing up in such a nurturing environment, alongside my bond with animals, molded me into the compassionate and responsible person I am today. As I matured, my passion for learning intensified. I recognized that education was my avenue to a brighter future, a means to craft the life I envisioned. Entering university, I was determined to pursue knowledge with vigor. I anticipated challenges, but I was prepared to tackle them. University became a place of self-exploration, where I refined my intellectual skills and deepened my curiosity about the world. I immersed myself in academics, setting aside distractions, including romantic pursuits. I was convinced that establishing a strong foundation for my future was paramount. Throughout university, my focus remained on my studies. While many peers engaged in dating, partying, and socializing, my priorities differed. My ambition was to develop my intellect and prepare for a future where I could make meaningful contributions. Friends often remarked on how distinct I was from others, but I was content with my choices. I knew that upon graduation, I would be equipped to face life's challenges. Completing my degree with outstanding results, I felt immense pride and satisfaction as I accepted my diploma. Post-graduation, I was eager to apply my knowledge to the world. Numerous paths lay before me. Corporate careers, further education, or even international prospects. Yet, I chose to pursue my passion for teaching. Many were puzzled by my choice. Why would someone with such a promising academic background opt to teach in a small town? They couldn't fathom why I would forego more lucrative options. To me, however, the decision was clear. Teaching was more than just a profession. Teaching was more than a career, it was a calling that resonated deeply within me. I felt an innate desire to impart the knowledge I had acquired and play a role in shaping the minds of the future. It was a heartfelt decision, one that finally brought me the fulfillment I had been seeking. When I shared my decision with my parents, they supported me in their unique ways. My mother embraced me warmly, expressing her long-held belief that teaching was my true vocation. My father, ever the pragmatist, gave me a knowing smile and a nod of approval, his faith in my choice evident. Their encouragement fortified my resolve to embark on this new journey. Earlier this year, after months of diligent effort and unwavering determination, I succeeded in passing the entrance exam to become a literature teacher. This achievement was hard-won, the fruit of countless hours of study, dedication, and perseverance. I accepted a teaching position at a secondary school in Windermere, a picturesque and tranquil town nestled in the English countryside. Known for its cobblestone streets, ivy-clad homes, and serene ambience, it was the ideal setting for a fresh start. As I packed for this new adventure, I felt a blend of excitement and apprehension. I found a quaint house near the school and embraced the gentle pace of country living. The house, modest yet inviting, was surrounded by a garden lush with lavender and verdant trees. Upon arriving in Windermere and stepping inside, I was enveloped by a profound sense of freedom. Living independently for the first time was both exhilarating and daunting. I took on the responsibility of furnishing, decorating, and adapting to the slower rhythm of life. The bustling sounds of London were replaced by birdsong and the soft rustle of leaves in the breeze. In the afternoon stillness, I often pondered the stark contrast between my past and present life. The frenetic energy of London was now a distant memory, replaced by the tranquil countryside. It was during these peaceful moments that I realized I had found my true home. To combat the solitude of living alone, I decided to adopt a Labrador. Naming him Maximum, Max became my steadfast companion, infusing my life with joy. Each morning, his wagging tail greeted me, spreading infectious enthusiasm that never failed to make me smile. In the evenings, after work, we would explore the winding streets of Windermere together. The town's charm, with its historic homes and verdant spaces, was even more enchanting with Max by my side. He was more than a pet, he was my confidant, my loyal friend, and the one who alleviated my loneliness. One evening in August 2004, after a particularly taxing day, I sank into the sofa, and Max eagerly joined me, ready to play. As we played, I noticed his eagerness to learn new tricks. To my delight, he quickly mastered them, and this became our evening ritual. After long days, playing with Max was my way to unwind and fill the emotional gaps in my life. For a time, Max was my sole source of comfort. The demands of teaching left little room for personal relationships. Throughout my academic years, my focus had been on studies, leaving little thought for romance. While career success was important, I gradually realized a void in my heart. As my career progressed, so did my yearning for connection. During these reflective moments, I came to understand the depth of my need for companionship. It was a brisk autumn afternoon when my life took an unexpected turn. After another exhausting day at school, my car unexpectedly stalled on my way home. Stranded in the middle of nowhere, a wave of panic began to rise within me. As dusk approached, I fumbled with my phone, trying to call for assistance, when a deep voice interrupted my thoughts. "Need some help?" Turning around, I met James, a man who would soon play a significant role in my life. A mechanic by trade, his sturdy build and calm demeanor immediately put me at ease. Despite the grease stains on his work attire, his smile was genuine and reassuring. Without hesitation, he approached my car and began working on it, striking up a conversation to ease my anxiety. I shared my experiences of living in Windermere, my teaching career, and my love for the tranquility of the countryside. In return, James recounted tales of his childhood, his passion for cars, and the joy he found in his work. Once he had my car running again, I offered to compensate him for his time, but James declined. "It's just a small job," he said with a warm smile. "If you need help again, just call me." He handed me a business card with his contact information. The setting sun illuminated his face, and his deep blue eyes radiated sincerity. I couldn't help but smile, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. From that day forward, James and I stayed in touch. As time passed, I grew to admire not only his mechanical skills but also the warmth and kindness he exuded. Our interactions were effortless, and I began to look forward to our encounters, whether brief or during leisurely strolls through town. James possessed a simplicity that resonated with me. He was genuine, down-to-earth, and easy to converse with. As our friendship deepened, I realized I was no longer seeking mere comfort. My feelings for James began to grow in unexpected ways. He made me laugh, shared his aspirations with me, and listened to mine. We spent countless afternoons wandering Windermere's charming streets, pausing for coffee at local cafes and savoring the countryside's serenity. One evening, just weeks into our friendship, James confessed he couldn't envision his life without me. His words were straightforward yet filled with sincerity, touching my heart in unforeseen ways. In that moment, I knew I had discovered something truly extraordinary. The loneliness of the past faded away, replaced by the warmth of his love and companionship. We chose not to delay. We planned an intimate wedding ceremony with our closest friends and family. The day was perfect, held at a quaint church on a green hill adorned with wildflowers. As I walked down the aisle, I saw James waiting at the altar, his eyes brimming with joy and hope. Our vows, exchanged in the golden afternoon light, felt like a lifelong promise to one another. After the wedding, we returned to my small house, which now felt like a genuine home. Together, we rearranged the furniture and added personal touches that reflected both of our personalities. Every evening, we shared quiet dinners by candlelight, engaging in deep conversations. On weekends, we rose early to prepare breakfast together, cherishing small but meaningful moments that enriched our life together. With James by my side, life became even more rewarding. Although we still faced the challenges of work and daily life, our love made everything feel more manageable. We learned to balance our time, sharing responsibilities and adapting to life as a couple. Throughout it all, Max remained a steadfast presence, adapting to the changes but never wavering in his loyalty. Our home in Windermere gradually transformed into a haven of warmth, laughter, and cherished memories. Of course, we had our disagreements, as all couples do, but we learned to navigate those challenges with patience and understanding. James and I prioritized open communication, working together to resolve issues, whether they involved household chores or personal preferences. Over time, our house became a repository of shared experiences, from the small repairs James tackled himself to the quiet evenings spent by candlelight and weekends dedicated to nurturing our flower garden. Max, content with the life we had created, basked in the sun, his tail wagging as he absorbed the joy that permeated our home. Though memories of my past occasionally resurfaced, the love James and I shared empowered me to move forward. My heart brimmed with contentment, and for the first time, I felt a profound sense of peace. I realized that despite any past mistakes, I had discovered a love that was genuine and untainted, and that was all that truly mattered. Rachel lay in bed, eyes fixed on the ceiling, as the bustling city sounds seeped through her window, unable to drown out her solitude. She had always been reserved, preferring her own company, but over time, the emptiness had intensified. Then she met Maximum. It was a rainy evening when she noticed him, a drenched, trembling stray dog, huddled at the street corner. Rachel typically ignored animals, but something in Max's gaze that day touched her deeply. She couldn't leave him there, so she brought him home. From that moment, Max became her constant companion, following her everywhere, never letting her out of sight. Initially, it felt reassuring. For the first time in ages, Rachel didn't feel utterly alone. Yet, over time, she began to notice something peculiar about Max's behavior. He wasn't merely protective, he was possessive. He barked at anyone who approached her, especially young men. If someone got too close, Max would growl until they retreated. Rachel soon found herself enamored with Maximum. Each night, their affectionate exchanges deepened their bond, and they would nestle together, finding solace in each other's presence. Their connection strengthened with each passing day, forming an undeniable bond. As months went by, Rachel's friends observed how she was never without Maximum. When visitors came to her apartment, Max's barking made normal conversation nearly impossible. When Rachel began chatting with Jake, a classmate, Max disapproved. The first time Jake visited to study, Max barked incessantly until Jake left, unable to concentrate. Jake didn't return, and Rachel increasingly found herself alone with Maximum. At first, she found Max's jealousy endearing. However, after losing several friends, she felt trapped. Max was her sole companion, and while she adored him, she started to question if his protectiveness was hindering her life. Determined to move forward and meet new people, Rachel tried to distance herself from Max. She dated a few men, hoping one might fill Max's place in her life. Yet, no one evoked the same feelings or passion Max did. Despite her attempts to move on, she was drawn back to Max time and again. Realizing she couldn't stop thinking about him, Rachel accepted that no one could replace him. Despite her social struggles, Rachel clung to her dream of studying abroad. Years of hard work paid off when she received a scholarship to a prestigious university overseas. Rachel was ecstatic. It was her opportunity to leave the city, start anew, and explore beyond her limited world. But one thing held her back. What about Max? Bringing him wasn't an option due to strict pet policies in student housing, and leaving him behind felt unbearable. Rachel was caught between her future and the dog who had been her steadfast companion. Just days before her flight, as she packed for the big move, her passport lay ready on the table. But after a quick trip to the store, she returned to find her passport shredded on the floor. Max sat amid the chaos, tail wagging, as if he had done nothing wrong. Rachel stood frozen, stunned by the scene. How had it come to this? Rachel's heart sank as the reality hit her. Her opportunity to leave had vanished in an instant. She attempted to salvage her passport, but it was beyond repair. The time required to obtain a replacement would be too long, and she would miss her chance. It was hard to fathom. Her dreams were slipping away, all because of Max. Conflicted, Rachel felt a surge of anger towards Max for what he had done, yet she couldn't entirely blame him. Perhaps he sensed her imminent departure and acted out of fear of abandonment. But was that a valid reason to sacrifice her future? Friends insisted she was too attached to Maximum. Her parents, unaware of the depth of her bond with the dog, advised her to prioritize her own well-being. Rachel began to wonder if they were right. Perhaps it was time to let Max go. That night, Rachel lay in bed, contemplating what to do about Maximum. Lately, his protectiveness had become overwhelming, as he insisted on accompanying her everywhere and monitoring her interactions. It was becoming suffocating, and she questioned whether she should finally let him go. Yet, as she pondered, she recalled how no other man made her feel the way Max did. He had an uncanny ability to bring her joy and satisfaction, unmatched by anyone else. The thought of finding that connection with someone new seemed improbable. Rachel realized that if she let Max go, she might never encounter anyone who could offer the same pleasure and intimacy. She feared disappointment with someone else and regretted losing Max. Some friends had stopped quarreling, weary of being barked at and driven away. Rachel tried convincing herself it didn't matter. As long as she had Max, she needed no one else. One day at school, a friend approached her during lunch, looking serious. "Rachel, I need to talk to you," she began. "The reason I stopped coming over is because of Maximum. Every time I visit, he goes wild, barking and chasing me. Honestly, I'm scared of him." Rachel was taken aback. Max? But he's harmless. Just protective. Her friend shook her head. "It's more than that. It's not normal, Rachel. People are talking. They say your relationship with Max is unusual. It's awkward." A wave of embarrassment washed over Rachel. She hadn't realized how much people had noticed. She thought no one knew. Her friend continued, "I care about you, but this isn't right. You need to address this before it gets worse." Rachel sat in silence, her mind racing. She hadn't considered how her bond with Max might appear to others. Now it was clear that her relationship with him was causing more issues than she had acknowledged. That evening, Rachel watched Max curl up at her feet. She loved him, but the growing sense that something needed to change was undeniable. She couldn't continue living this way, confined by her attachment to him. She packed a small bag with Max's belongings and arranged for a friend to take him temporarily. It was one of the hardest decisions she had ever faced. But she felt it was necessary. Max looked at her with puzzled eyes as she led him to the door. For a moment, she nearly reconsidered. But she didn't. That night, Rachel lay in bed, alone for the first time in years. The apartment felt emptier than ever, the silence oppressive. She tossed and turned, missing Max's presence more than she had anticipated. The room felt cold and lifeless without him by her side. Tears welled up in her eyes as she realized just how much she had relied on him. Rachel had initially believed that letting Max go was the right decision, but now she wasn't so sure. Unable to sleep, she dressed and ventured into the city to find him. The streets were quiet, with city lights casting long shadows. She found Max at her friend's place, his tail wagging excitedly as he saw her. Hugging him tightly, Rachel felt a wave of relief wash over her. She had always been cautious about who she allowed into her life. After everything with Max, she feared opening up to people again. Yet, when she met Daniel, something felt different. He was kind, humorous, and genuinely interested in her. Gradually, they began spending more time together, and for the first time in years, Rachel believed she could balance her life with Max and a new relationship. It wasn't long before Daniel invited Rachel to his home. He was on a month-long holiday from work and wanted to spend more time with her. "Come over," he suggested one evening. "We can relax, watch movies, maybe even cook together. I've got the whole month off." Rachel smiled, liking the idea, but she knew there was something she needed to address before agreeing. "Can I bring Max?" Rachel asked. Daniel paused, then laughed, thinking she was joking. "Wait, you're serious? You want to bring your dog?" Rachel nodded, explaining, "Max goes with me everywhere. I can't leave him behind. If Max can't come, I won't either." Daniel hesitated. He wasn't fond of dogs, and the idea of having one in his home was unappealing. He didn't understand Rachel's attachment to Max but didn't want to lose her over it. "I'm not really a dog person," he said cautiously, "but if that's what it takes, Max can come." Rachel was pleased with his response. She wasn't sure how Daniel felt about Max, but she was relieved he didn't push the issue. Max was her protector and companion, and she wasn't ready to prioritize anyone, even Daniel, over him. A few days later, Rachel and Max arrived at Daniel's apartment. Daniel opened the door with a nervous smile as Max trotted in behind Rachel. The dog sniffed around, exploring the new surroundings. Daniel watched uneasily, unsure how this would work but determined to try. Initially, everything went smoothly. Rachel and Daniel sat on the couch, chatting and laughing, while Max lay at Rachel's feet. Everything seemed peaceful until Daniel leaned in to kiss Rachel. As soon as his lips neared, Max sprang up, barking loudly, startling them both. Daniel recoiled, his heart racing. "Whoa! What was that about?" Rachel sighed, patting Max's head. "He's just protective. He'll get used to you." Daniel wasn't convinced. Every time he tried to get close to Rachel, Max barked fiercely, baring his teeth as if warning Daniel to stay away. Daniel tried to laugh it off, but the tension was mounting. He couldn't relax with Max glaring at him from across the room. Over the following days, Daniel noticed how much attention Rachel gave Maximum whenever he tried to hold her hand or cuddle. Max would bark or wedge himself between them. It was as if the dog was claiming Rachel as his own, and despite Daniel's patience, it was wearing thin. One evening, as they sat on the couch watching a movie, Daniel attempted to kiss Rachel again. But just like before, Max growled and barked, causing Daniel to back off. Frustrated, Daniel threw up his hands. "I can't do this, Rachel. Every time I try to get close to you, your dog loses it. I'm trying here, but Max doesn't like me." Rachel felt torn, loving Daniel but prioritizing Maximum. "He's just not used to you yet. Give him time, he'll calm down." Daniel shook his head. It's been days. Max seemed to sense Daniel's discomfort, always positioning himself between them. Rachel understood Daniel's frustration, but the thought of life without Max was unimaginable. "I need Max," she said softly. "He's been there through everything." Rachel managed to keep a fragile peace between Max and Daniel. Daniel made efforts to get along with Max, and Max, though still possessive, began to relax around him. However, there was a deeper truth Rachel hadn't shared with anyone, not even Daniel. Whenever Daniel left for work or was away, Rachel turned to Max for solace. It became routine. As soon as Daniel was out the door, she'd sit with Max, stroking his fur, whispering secrets she wouldn't share with anyone else. Max was more than a pet, he was her confidant, her protector, filling a void no one else could. Rachel knew it wasn't typical. She understood she shouldn't feel this way, but she couldn't help it. Max had been her constant through loneliness, heartbreaks, and even her struggle to open up to Daniel. One evening, Daniel returned home, weary and frustrated. The moment he entered, Max began barking incessantly. Daniel had reached his breaking point, clenching his fists in an attempt to remain calm, but the noise overwhelmed him. "Enough?" Daniel shouted. "I can't take this anymore." Rachel rushed to soothe Max, but it was too late. Daniel turned to her, face flushed with anger. "You need to leave, Rachel. I'm done with you and that dog." Rachel's heart dropped. "Daniel, please," she pleaded. "Max didn't mean it. He's just protective." Daniel scoffed. "He's out of control. And you, I don't even know what's going on between you two. It's like you care more about that dog than anything else." "That's not true," Rachel cried. "I love you, Daniel. Please don't make me leave. I'll figure something out, I promise." But Daniel shook his head. "No, Rachel, I'm done. I can't live like this anymore, with you and your overprotective dog. It's too much." Tears filled Rachel's eyes as she realized Daniel wouldn't change his mind. She tried once more to plead, but he pointed to the door. "Go away. I don't want you here anymore." Heartbroken, Rachel gathered her things and, with Max by her side, left Daniel's home. Months later, Rachel met Robert. She loved him deeply and felt ready for a fresh start. She was weary of her past, especially the complicated bond with Max. Determined to make this relationship work, she focused on Robert. After months of dating, Robert proposed, and Rachel, elated, shared the news with her best friend, Angela. She couldn't wait to tell her. But along with the joy, Rachel felt compelled to confess something she'd hidden for a long time. During their conversation, she revealed her past with Max, admitting how close she'd become to the dog in a way that wasn't typical. Angela was shocked, but listened intently as Rachel begged her to keep it secret. Rachel understood her relationship with Max had been unhealthy, and she wanted to move forward, to start anew with Robert. Angela, still processing the revelation, promised to keep it confidential. She encouraged Rachel to fully address the issue, but Rachel asked for time. Rachel was determined to leave her past behind and focus on a new future with Robert, hoping for a fresh start. As she and Angela strolled down the street, Angela casually suggested, "Let me see this man you've been talking so much about." Rachel beamed, eager to show her friend the man she planned to marry. She pulled out her phone and opened a picture of Robert, handing it to Angela. The moment Angela saw the image, her heart skipped a beat. She tried to mask her reaction, but internally, she was taken aback. Robert wasn't just any man, he was her secret crush, someone she had admired from a distance for months. Angela had never mentioned him to Rachel, as she hadn't anticipated their paths crossing like this. Now, seeing Robert as Rachel's fiancé, Angela felt a mix of jealousy and disappointment. Maintaining her composure, she returned the phone to Rachel, feigning a smile. "He looks nice," Angela said, forcing cheerfulness, though she was struggling with the revelation. From that moment, Angela began sowing seeds of doubt in Rachel's mind. "You know," she mentioned one afternoon, "I actually know Robert's ex-girlfriend. She shared some things about him that aren't flattering. You should be cautious, Rachel." Rachel was taken aback. "Really? What did she say?" Angela hesitated, pretending to think. "Well, I don't want to go into too many details, but she mentioned Robert wasn't always truthful with her. He hurt her, and I don't want you to experience the same." Rachel frowned, uncertain of what to believe. "That doesn't sound like Robert at all. He's been nothing but kind to me." "I'm just looking out for you," Angela replied, trying to sound concerned. "I'm not saying you should leave him immediately, but maybe consider it carefully. You deserve someone truly good for you." Despite Angela's warnings, Rachel trusted Robert. She couldn't reconcile his character with Angela's portrayal. The more Angela pressed, the more resolute Rachel became about her choice to be with him. Over the following weeks, Angela continued to highlight Robert's alleged flaws. "I've heard more stories about him," she'd say, shaking her head. "He's not who you think he is, Rachel. You're making a mistake." But Rachel remained steadfast. She was in love, and nothing Angela said could sway her. Angela grew angry, feeling ignored by Rachel, and it pained her to know the man she had feelings for was about to marry her best friend. Angela's frustration simmered, and though she tried to conceal it, tension between them began to mount. Rachel noticed Angela's changed demeanor but didn't understand why. She assumed Angela was just concerned for her, unaware that jealousy was the true cause. One afternoon, Robert visited Rachel. As soon as he entered, Max began barking loudly, as he always did around newcomers. Robert froze, turning pale. He had always been uneasy around dogs, and Max's aggressive barking heightened his anxiety. Without saying much, Robert quickly retreated from the house, too afraid to stay. Rachel watched him leave, feeling embarrassed and frustrated. This was the breaking point. She loved Robert and wanted a future with him, but Max was becoming a hurdle she could no longer ignore. He had caused issues with Daniel before, and now he was scaring away the man she wanted to marry. It was time to make a difficult decision. That evening, Rachel resolved to act. She took Max to her neighbors, who were relocating to another city and had agreed to take Max into their home. The neighbors had always been fond of Max and had ample space for him. As she handed Max over, the dog whimpered and cried, sensing something was amiss. His sad eyes followed Rachel as she turned away. Rachel had made her decision, and she wasn't looking back. She was ready to embrace a future with Robert, free from the chaos Max had brought into her life. As she walked back to her house, a mix of sadness and relief washed over her. Letting Max go hadn't been easy, but she knew it was necessary. She had chosen love and was determined to leave the past behind, focusing on her future with Robert. Angela's attempts to spread rumors and lies about Robert had failed, leaving her frustrated. Watching Rachel move forward with her engagement made Angela desperate. Angela decided to take a different approach, threatening to reveal Rachel's past with Max unless she received a monthly payment. She demanded money, insisting that Rachel could afford it with the allowance Robert provided. Despite Rachel's protests about her financial situation, Angela was relentless. Left with no choice, Rachel agreed to Angela's demands, hoping to keep her quiet. As the months passed, Angela's greed grew, with her demands becoming increasingly burdensome. Rachel found herself overwhelmed, caught between planning her wedding and the weight of Angela's extortion. The closer the wedding approached, the worse things became. Rachel's once excited anticipation for her future with Robert was overshadowed by anxiety and fear. She knew she couldn't continue paying Angela indefinitely, but she felt trapped. Angela held too much power over her, and the threats seemed never-ending. Rachel reached her breaking point. The constant fear of exposure and Angela's threats were too much to bear. She realized she couldn't continue living this way, especially with her wedding approaching. One night, after another sleepless evening, Rachel resolved to tell Robert the truth. The following day, she sat him down, heart-pounding. She confessed everything: her unusual attachment to Max, Angela's blackmail, and the fear that had consumed her. She braced for Robert's reaction, expecting shock or anger, but he listened quietly, never interrupting. When she finished, silence hung in the air. Rachel looked down, unable to meet Robert's gaze, waiting for his response. Finally, he reached out, taking her hand and gently lifting her chin to meet his eyes. Robert admitted he wasn't perfect either. He shared that he had made mistakes in his past, things he regretted. He told Rachel that everyone errs, but what mattered was moving forward together without letting the past dictate their future. He forgave her, assuring her that her history with Max didn't change his feelings for her. He loved her for who she was now and wasn't going to let her past or Angela's threats ruin their future. Rachel was overwhelmed with relief. She had anticipated the worst, yet Robert had shown her compassion and understanding. For the first time in months, she felt liberated, free from guilt, free from Angela's control, and ready to embark on a new chapter with Robert. A few days after her confession, Angela called again, demanding her usual payment. Rachel, now empowered with newfound confidence, answered the phone. This time, there was no fear in her voice. Calmly, she told Angela to go to hell. Angela, taken aback by Rachel's boldness, paused before launching into threats of exposure. But Rachel remained unfazed. In a last-ditch effort, Angela decided to confront Robert directly, hoping to shatter Rachel's life once and for all. Dialing his number, she believed she could manipulate the situation to her advantage. But when Robert answered, her plan unraveled spectacularly. With a smug tone, Angela began revealing all the details, confident she could still sway Robert. She recounted how Rachel had been involved with Max in an unusual way and how she had been blackmailing Rachel for months, expecting Robert to be appalled. Instead, Robert's calm response caught her off guard. "I already know everything, Angela," Robert said, his voice unwavering. "Rachel told me herself, and I've forgiven her. Whatever you're trying to achieve, it won't work." A long silence followed on the other end. Angela was stunned. All her plotting, all her threats, had crumbled. In that moment, she realized she had lost. Robert remained steadfast in his support of Rachel, and nothing Angela did could change that. For the first time, Angela felt a pang of shame. She had allowed jealousy and bitterness to consume her, and now it had all collapsed. She searched for words to salvage her dignity, but found none. Defeated, she hung up, understanding that her friendship with Rachel and any influence she once wielded were gone. A few days later, Rachel and Robert's wedding day arrived. The weather was perfect, with the sun shining brightly. Rachel stood in her wedding dress, feeling as if a weight had been lifted. She radiated joy as she walked down the aisle, aware that she had overcome the toughest challenges with Robert by her side. The ceremony was beautiful, a celebration filled with love and happiness. Family and friends gathered to witness their union, oblivious to the trials they had faced. But none of that mattered anymore. Rachel had found true happiness, and nothing could take that away. As she and Robert exchanged vows, Rachel couldn't help but smile, knowing she had chosen love over fear, leading her to this moment. With the past behind her and a bright future ahead, Rachel was ready to begin her new life as Robert's wife. They sealed their vows with a kiss, met with applause and cheers, marking the start of a life filled with hope, trust, and love. Rachel's journey imparts a vital lesson about boundaries and honesty. The moral is clear: don't let your actions lead you down a path you know isn't right. Setting boundaries in all relationships, whether with people or pets, is crucial. And when mistakes are made, the only way forward is to confront them with courage and seek forgiveness, not just from others, but from yourself. Dear viewers, what lessons did you take from this dramatic tale? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed the story, give us a thumbs up, share it with friends, and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss our latest updates. Thanks for watching and stay blessed. At 72, I found myself a widow living in solitude. My only companion had been my cat, Tom, and after his passing, the silence in my home became overwhelming. My daughter, Sarah, suggested I consider a pet to alleviate my loneliness, and eventually, I chose to adopt a dog. I brought Charlie home from the shelter, not realizing the profound friendship that would blossom. Initially, he was simply a dog, albeit an exceptionally attentive one. Charlie seemed to sense my moods. He would nudge my hand with his cool nose and wag his tail to lift my spirits. I often found myself talking to him, a habit many would consider normal when there's no one else around. Over time, our bond deepened into something I never anticipated. I vividly recall one particular night, a night that marked a shift within me. I was seated on the couch, lost in thoughts of Tom. It was the anniversary of Tom's passing, and I was weary from tears. Charlie sat beside me, but this evening was different. He climbed onto the couch and rested his head on my lap. His gaze met mine, seemingly absorbing the weight of my sorrow. As if he truly understood, I murmured, "You're a good boy, Charlie," while gently stroking his soft ears. His presence eased my heartache. It felt as though he was the only one who comprehended my pain. The way he looked at me wasn't merely that of a pet to its owner. It was more profound, an emotion that felt almost human. This connection grew over the months, and Charlie ceased being just a pet to me. Each morning, I awoke to find him at the foot of my bed, where Tom once slept. This new routine became something I cherished and eagerly anticipated. Even on quiet nights, the comfort of his warm body beside me brought its own solace. It wasn't just his warmth that changed things, it was his constant presence. He began shadowing me everywhere, watching me intently, a behavior that initially unsettled me. His eyes seemed to follow my every move with unwavering anticipation. Before long, I realized an indescribable connection had formed between us. It was a mystery to me at the time. One particular evening stood out. It was late, and the house was still. I had just finished my tea and was preparing for bed when Charlie bounded into the room, as he often did. However, this time, he didn't settle at the foot of the bed. Instead, he sat beside me. His deep, dark eyes pierced into mine. A peculiar flutter stirred within my chest. "Charlie, what are you doing?" I asked softly, attempting to lighten the sudden tension. Yet, he remained unmoved. He continued to gaze at me, his eyes filled with an intensity that both intrigued and unsettled me. My heart raced, yet I couldn't look away. It felt absurd. In that moment, I could have sworn I saw something extraordinary. It was beyond the ordinary. I felt confused as Charlie nestled closer to my side. He rested his head on my hip and wagged his tail gently. There was an unspoken connection, and I found myself reaching out to stroke him. My fingers quivered slightly. It was then I realized the warmth of a bond one hadn't felt in years. Not since that night with Tom had things been so profoundly different. Charlie's attachment to me grew stronger with each passing day. Wherever I went, he was there, watching, waiting, always seeking to be near. The night we shared that close contact, he drew even nearer. His presence was comforting, yes, but there was an underlying discomfort I couldn't quite shake. At first, I struggled to acknowledge it. I recall waking one night, bathed in moonlight casting shadows across the room, and there was Charlie, nestled beside me. His face was so near I could feel his breath, causing me to pause. As I reached out to stroke his fur, a wave of warmth enveloped me. He responded by snuggling closer, and in that half-asleep state, vulnerability took hold. An undeniable awareness dawned on me: our connection was deepening in ways I couldn't easily rationalize. I tried dismissing it, attributing it to loneliness playing tricks on my mind. After all, I was an elderly woman who had lost her lifelong companion. Was it wrong to find solace in a dog? Yet, the feelings intensified. Charlie seemed attuned to it as well. He shadowed me everywhere. Always by my side, his eyes never strayed from me. It felt as though an unseen force was binding us beyond ordinary friendship. It was bewildering, yet undeniable. I needed him more than I cared to admit. Then came the night that altered everything. Restless and unable to sleep, my thoughts were a chaotic whirlwind, and I couldn't shake the sensation that something was evolving between us. I ventured downstairs, hoping a glass of water would soothe my nerves, but upon returning to the bedroom, Charlie was already there, occupying my side of the bed. As I approached, he remained still, not even blinking, simply waiting for me. I hesitated but eventually slipped into bed. As I settled under the covers, Charlie moved closer. His body pressed against mine, offering a peculiar comfort. My mind, like constellations descending into a dark world, should have recoiled, for nature seemed momentarily altered. Yet, I allowed him to stay. We quietly absorbed each other's warmth. My heart filled voids that had been empty for so long, yet I felt no shame. As we lay there, I experienced a tranquility unlike any since Tom's passing. It felt wrong, perhaps. But in another sense, it was undeniably right, in a way I couldn't articulate. We spent a long time there in the darkness. There was no urgency to rise. In the days that followed, a tumultuous mix of confusion and guilt enveloped me. This evolving relationship with Charlie was perplexing. Yet, I couldn't pull away. I needed him more than I'd realized. The depth of the void within me had been greater than I knew. But as weeks passed, clarity emerged. This unusual emotional entanglement with my canine companion wasn't healthy. I was dissatisfied with life. And I was particularly troubled by the lack of control. I found myself in an unimaginable situation. The first step was to stop. Confronting reality, I realized I was seeking from Charlie what I should have sought from people, family, and friends. Admitting this was difficult. But the truth became clear. I had to sever this toxic bond before it deepened. Charlie was a wonderful, loyal dog. Yet, he couldn't fill the void left by Tom, so I began to withdraw. I spent more time with Sarah and my grandchildren, reconnecting with the human relationships I had neglected. I reconnected with old friends and rediscovered activities that once brought me joy. Charlie remained a constant presence in my life. He was always by my side, but I consciously established the boundaries I needed. I reminded myself that he was, after all, just a dog. He was my loyal companion, but not a substitute for human connection. Reflecting on this, I realized how easily loneliness can lead one into unexpected, even decadent, emotional territories. I had allowed my grief to cloud my judgment. This led to an unhealthy attachment, but eventually, I found my way back and learned to lean on those who truly cared for me. Most importantly, I understood that, despite my affection for Charlie, he could never fulfill my need for human interaction. Now, in my quiet home, Charlie lies at my feet, as he always does. I wish I could say that everything returned to normal after I decided to redefine my relationship with Charlie. But the truth is, the journey back was long and arduous. Some evenings, when the silence felt overwhelming, I found myself doubting and seeking comfort in Charlie. Old habits die hard, after all. Each day, I reminded myself that this was an unhealthy dynamic, detrimental to both of us. He was a dog, offering unconditional love. But he couldn't replace the human connections I craved. I began seeking more opportunities to engage with people. My daughter Sarah was the first to notice this change. During a tea visit one afternoon, she remarked, "Mom, you've been visiting more often these days." There was a warmth in her voice that I hadn't heard in years. I realized my withdrawal had also left a void for them. "I just don't want to be alone so much," I admitted, though I wasn't ready to share the peculiar bond one had formed with Charlie. How could I? I felt ashamed, and Sarah was always practical. She couldn't possibly grasp the depth of my loneliness. Smiling, she reassured me, "We're always here for you, Mom. You know that." Her words brought comfort but also regret. Why hadn't I reached out sooner? Why had I let my grief and isolation push me towards such a strange emotional reliance on a dog rather than my own family? I made a concerted effort to reconnect with the world beyond my little home. I resumed reading, something I hadn't done in ages, and joined a local book club. It was challenging to sit and chat with other women. They spoke of children and grandchildren, their lives bustling with people. I felt out of place. Years of solitude had eroded my social skills. But slowly, I began to enjoy their company. We discussed novels over tea, laughed at plots, and characters that reminded us of people we knew. It felt wonderful to laugh again, to feel that long-lost lightness in my heart. Charlie remained my steadfast friend. But I became more mindful of the boundaries I needed to maintain. No longer did I allow him to sleep in my bed. It was a habit I had to break. Instead, on my darkest days, I would gently pat his head before bed, and he would settle into his cozy spot at my feet. Initially, it was difficult to resist the urge to pull him close and let his warmth comfort me as it once did. But I knew I had to be steadfast. As the months passed, I began to notice changes within myself. While I suspected there would always be a place for Tom in my heart, the loneliness that once weighed so heavily no longer drove me to seek solace in Charlie. Slowly, I was learning that pain and emptiness are universal experiences, but they do not define who I am. I had friends, people I could reach out to, and I had Charlie. Yet, despite his boundless affection, it wasn't the kind of love I truly yearned for. On a bright autumn afternoon, roughly a year after the peculiar turning point with Charlie, I realized I had reached a significant milestone. I went for a stroll in the park, with Charlie happily trotting beside me. The air was crisp. Leaves danced in the breeze, and the scent of pine filled the air. As I glanced around, I noticed others walking their dogs. They laughed and chatted, and I was pleasantly surprised to see some familiar faces. It was remarkably easy to appreciate the companionship of both humans and animals as Charlie paused to sniff the fallen leaves. His tail wagged contentedly, and I smiled at him. "You're a good dog," I murmured, scratching his ears. He gazed up at me with his warm brown eyes, filled with the same love and loyalty he had always shown. But now I understood it for what it was, pure, simple, and unconditional. Still, it wasn't enough to fill the void that only human relationships could address. In the months that followed, I opened up more. I let my family in, sharing the struggles I faced and confronting the loneliness that had engulfed me after Tom's passing. I even hinted to Sarah, in a roundabout way, about how much I had come to rely on Charlie. She listened quietly, her expression full of understanding, and when I finished, she embraced me tightly. "Mom," she said softly, "we're always here." For the first time in a long while, I believed her. I realized I didn't have to navigate this journey alone. There were people who loved me and wanted to help me heal, and while Charlie was an essential part of this journey, he couldn't be my entire world. He was my dog, my steadfast friend, but I needed to start trusting those around me again. Reflecting on it all, I saw how loneliness could lead one into unusual circumstances, forming bonds that might seem perplexing to others. Yet, ultimately, what truly matters are the connections with people, the care and support from family and friends. Charlie would always hold a special place in my heart, but I was beginning to embrace the world beyond my quiet home once more. Here we are, Charlie. He lies at my feet. I feel a sense of peace, a natural calm. And this signifies that I am reconnecting with the source of my pain and welcoming those closest to me back into my life. After all, it's the bonds with people that ultimately mend our hearts. Temporary solace can never fully replace the healing power of human connection, no matter how loyal a dog may be.